China has built AI robots that will act and work like a wife.
What if I told you there's a country where you can walk through abandoned Disney castles, dine inside a grounded airplane, or stay overnight in the body of a giant god? China has built some of the most bizarre, unsettling, and downright creepy structures on Earth.
China has built another creepy building that is straight out of a horror movie.
From ghost cities with zero residents to farms breeding billions of cockroaches, these aren't just buildings. They're nightmares made real. Today, we're counting down 20 of the creepiest things ever built in China. Number 20. Cockroach Farm. Imagine opening your door and seeing 20 million cockroaches scurrying across every surface. The sound is deafening, like rain on a roof, but it's millions of tiny legs scratching against plastic. That's exactly what it's like in places like Jinan, where farmers manage billions of cockroaches. One farm near the city handles around 1 billion insects across 60 rooms because each room houses about 20 million roaches. That means if every roach was a person, this single room would house more inhabitants than most countries. And the workers even have it worse. They have to wear full hazmat suits because the roach waste creates extremely toxic air. And if you're wondering what they're used for, know that they serve as natural waste management. Food scraps from restaurants are pumped through pipes onto their shelves, and cockroaches gobble them up non-stop. These insects are also used to make food. Plus, in traditional Chinese, roaches are the active ingredient in kangfuxinye, a healing extract used by millions. Perhaps the most astounding is the world's largest cockroach farm in Xichang, run by Good Doctor Pharmaceutical Group. Nearly 6 billion roaches are bred annually in a facility the size of 2 sports fields. 19. Beijing Underground City. While Beijing is bustling, just 15 meters below, there's an entire subterranean city, an estimated 85 kilometers square, with schools, theaters, hospitals, storage rooms, and even mushroom farms. This underground refuge, born of nuclear paranoia, was constructed from 1969 to 1979 on Mao Zedong's orders, at a time when conflict with the Soviet Union felt imminent. It was built by about 300,000 volunteers, including school children, by repurposing bricks from Beijing's ancient walls to build a bunker city that could hide 40% of the capital's population. But after the Cold War passed, much of the underground city was forgotten. A portion opened to tourists around 2000, only to be closed 8 years later, without reopening for years. 18. Deserted Wonderland. Imagine walking through what should have been China's replica of Disneyland, but instead of laughter, you hear only wind whistling through rusted rides. Half-built castle towers loom like broken teeth against the sky. That replica is Wonderland, a half-built theme park that was meant to be Asia's largest amusement park, but never actually opened. Back in the 1990s, the Rainwood Group had plans to set up a 120-acre fantasy kingdom with towers, rides, and every kind of fairy tale fun. Construction began in 1998, but soon came to a halt for unknown reasons. From that point on, Wonderland stood frozen in time. Even farmers quietly returned and reclaimed patches of land to sow crops. But by 2013, the story took another turn. Most of Wonderland was finally demolished. 17. Cat Market. Would you believe that there's an entire neighborhood in southern China has rows of metal cages are stacked from floor to ceiling, filled with cats crying in distress. The sound echoes through the market like a feline horror movie. In cities like Guangzhou, such markets even feed into the culinary tradition of cat and dog meat. And the meat is sold fresh, often for specialty dishes served in local restaurants. Vendors might even justify it, saying the animals were bred specifically for food and aren't pets. But the ethical controversy is impossible to ignore. But as China evolves, so do its values. Cities like Shenzhen and Zhuhai have gone ahead and banned the sale and consumption of cat and dog meat. However, there are still hidden markets in parts of the country who are running the business illegally. 16. Nail houses. You're driving on a highway and you see an old desolate house surrounded by dust and broken utilities right there in the middle of the road. What happens next? Well, in China, they exist, and they are called nail houses, a literal translation of the Chinese dingzihu, meaning a house or household that just won't budge, like a nail you can't hammer down. Homes like this usually come from a clash, when families refuse to leave because they feel compensation is unfair, or they're emotionally attached to the land passed down for generations. However, it doesn't always end well for anyone who plies such roads. The Chinese believe that they have the power to lay a curse on anyone and everyone who had something to do with the potential displacement. So, for many years, such roads could experience inexplicable accidents, seeing imaginary people crossing the road and sometimes a wall right in front of the vehicle. It's a surreal situation that makes you question the existence of karma and curses, but the smart ones? They avoid such roads. 15. Hanging coffins. Imagine hiking down through Chinese mountains and looking up to see hundreds of wooden coffins hanging from cliffsides like macabre ornaments. This seemingly creepy sight is actually a respected burial custom among some of China's ancient ethnic groups, especially the Bo people of Sichuan and Yunnan. You could be walking along a steep cliff and look up to see wooden coffins tucked into caves, several feet above the ground. And many locals believed that placing the dead closer to the sky brought them nearer to the heavens and offered protection to those living below. Unfortunately, some coffins have started to rot, and you can catch a glimpse of ancient bones. Although the practice faded out several centuries ago, you can still find these cliffside burials in places like the Yangtze River gorges and parts of Fujian and Sichuan. 14. Haunted house. This building, called Keone No. 81, is reputed to be Beijing's most celebrated haunted house, and you'll soon find out why. It was built around 1910 in French Baroque style, and was initially tied to the Catholic Church as a language school or missionary rest point. Later, it served various government offices around 1949, and after that, no one really knew what went on in the building. But legends continuously swirl around this place. Most people say it's haunted by the ghost of a despondent woman who, having been abandoned by a Kuomintang officer fleeing to Taiwan, took her own life there. Even Red Guards supposedly fled it in a hurry during the Cultural Revolution. Rumor says even they couldn't stand the atmosphere. 13. Ocean Flower Island. Magnificent? Yes. Artificial? Absolutely. This is the Ocean Flower Island, 3 man-made islets on the northwest coast of Danzhou, Hainan. It's shaped like a blooming flower and covers about 381 hectares. Construction kicked off around 2013. They poured in an entire $24 billion and wrapped much of the build by late 2020. Since then, there has been a lot of talk about how such a huge project and an outrageous amount of money could have been used to take on more important projects. Not to even mention that this massive artificial island required destroying marine ecosystems and moving millions of tons of seafloor. Some may call it an engineering marvel, but it looks more like an environmental nightmare floating in the South China Sea. 12. Eye of Heaven. If you're ever in Guizhou province and you come across a massive silver dish, you should probably run far away from it. That's the 500-meter aperture spherical telescope, also called FAST. It's also the world's largest single-dish radio telescope, built with over 4,450 adjustable panels that morph into the perfect parabola to catch signals from space. It was constructed in 2011, and it lit up the sky with its first light in 2016. By January 2020, it was fully operational, ready to scan the cosmos. But here's the problem. Studies are currently underway, and there's a chance that it could be producing radiation powerful enough to pose a serious health risk to anyone who constantly comes in contact with it. That's why tourists and visitors aren't allowed in the core telescope area. And guess what? Phase 2 is underway. China is adding 24 smaller movable dishes around FAST to create a super array that boosts its resolution by over 30 times. Again, you don't want to be anywhere near this thing. 11. Replica Paris. If you ever thought Paris was one of a kind, think again. In Hangzhou, eastern China, there's a neighborhood called Tianducheng. This place looks suspiciously like the City of Light. In fact, there's a replica Eiffel Tower that goes about 354 feet high, but about one-third the size of the original. Tianducheng was actually built in 2007 and was meant to be a luxury housing development, but instead of cafes and crowded streets, the town spent years as a ghost city. But why would the Chinese even bother to replicate another city in one of theirs? Is there something more disturbing going on? Tianducheng really shows just how powerful the idea of a city can be, even when transplanted to a completely different corner of the world. 10. Lily Airways. What if I told you that in China, you could enjoy being in an airplane without actually boarding a flight? That means you'd be boarding Lily Airways, a quirky, airplane-turned restaurant parked on a busy pedestrian street in Wuhan, China. This story began when entrepreneur Li Yang bought a decommissioned jet from bankrupt Indonesian airline Batavia Air for $6 million. Next came months of painstaking work, disassembling the aircraft into pieces, shipping it to China, and reassembling it at its new home in Wuhan's Optics Valley walking street. And now, it's absolutely deluxe. Waitstaff appear in attendant uniforms and are handpicked based on height and hospitality standards. Though they might fall a little on the high side, meals are of various kinds, just like in any regular restaurant. 9. Ghost Mall. Imagine walking through a mall larger than any in America, but hearing only your own footsteps echoing in the emptiness. Mannequins stand in dark windows like frozen spectators watching you pass. This is the new South China Mall, opened in 2005, and more than twice the size of the Mall of America. On opening day, developers dreamed of 100,000 daily visitors, but something strange happened. The shoppers never came. By 2008, 99% of its retail space lay empty, and that earned it the nickname Ghost Mall. This was majorly because the location was a deal-breaker. It was built far from Dongguan's center, with no major highways, airports, or public transit nearby. Plus, the surrounding area mainly housed factory workers, not the affluent shoppers the developers had imagined. 8. Haunted Tombs. There's a peaceful valley, wrapped by the Jundu Mountains just north of Beijing. That's where the ancient Ming emperors decided to rest. It was a spot chosen to protect their final resting places from evil winds and bad energy. Only 3 of the 13 tombs are open today to explore up close: Changling, Dingling, and Zhaoling. However, the Dingling tomb, which is the only one excavated, has proven to be the most mysterious. When archaeologists opened it in the 1950s, they found silk robes, jade ornaments, and even the skeletal remains of the Wanli Emperor and his two empresses. But soon after the discovery, silk robes that had survived for centuries crumbled to dust within hours of exposure, as if the tomb itself was angry at being disturbed. Since then, tourists have been prevented from the site, and it will now only be accessed by top officials. 7. Ghost Village. No, it's not a village full of ghosts, but it's close. Shengshan Island was founded in the 1950s, and the town Hutuan grew to house over 2,000 fishermen and their families in brick houses. But life wasn't easy. Its remoteness meant no proper roads, limited access to schools, and dwindling fish stocks, especially with competition from booming mainland markets. By the 1990s, families had no choice but to migrate to the mainland for better opportunities. The exodus continued until around 2002, when nearly everyone had left. What remained was a village in suspension, and within just a few years, every surface became coated in thick ivy and moss, and many houses were abandoned by their owners. For anyone who's visiting, all you'll see is a deserted city where people used to call home. 6. Mausoleum of the First Qin Emperor. Even after more than 2 millennia later, this monument still fascinates and sometimes creeps out the entire world. That's the mausoleum of China's very first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. Construction kicked off around 246 BC when the emperor was just 13 and continued until about 208 BC. Then, in 1974, farmers struck archaeological gold when life-sized clay warriors, horses, bronze chariots, and weapons emerged from pits suddenly arranged in battle formation. A lot of people say these are the actual people who went to war on behalf of the king, and this was his way of honoring them. People who have been to the museum themselves say the stone figures have such intense stares that they could be mistaken for real people. 5. Fake Apple Store. Imagine you were on vacation in China and you walked into what looks like a beautiful Apple store. You know, the minimalist decor, wooden tables, winding staircase, staff in blue t-shirts, everything intact. But guess what? It's all fake. Really great imitation, but still fake. That's how it all went down, as revealed by a blogger called Bird Abroad. She was basically swept off her feet by how convincing it all was. Even the employees genuinely believed they worked for Apple. Word spread fast, and Chinese officials decided to take a look. They found not one, but 5 of these knockoff Apple shops in Kunming. 2 were closed for lacking proper business licenses, while the rest stayed open for a time. Later, investigations revealed as many as 22 fake Apple stores in the same city, all illegal copies trying to cash in on Apple's brand recognition. 4. Danyang Kunshan Grand Bridge. The longest bridge in the entire world is the Danyang Kunshan Grand Bridge, which measures 102 miles, rivers, towns, and even a lake, carrying the high-speed train between Beijing and Shanghai. The construction was a turbocharged 4-year race between 2006 and 2010. They had to employ over 10,000 workers, and it all cost almost $9 billion. The bridge officially opened in mid-2011 and immediately claimed the Guinness title as the world's longest bridge. But guess what? In over 13 years of its opening, there hasn't been one single accident or mishap on the bridge. And many say it's because certain forces are constantly watching everything that happens on the bridge. How true could this really be? Could there be someone or something saving people as soon as they mount the bridge? 3. Dragon Escalator. How fun would it be inside a dragon-shaped escalator snaking its way up 880 feet? It's not a movie prop. It's the world's longest outdoor escalator, and it's designed to look like a dragon leaping skyward. The escalator, also called the Flying Dragon, was designed by Schindler in China and once held a Guinness-like record for the longest escalator installation. It's located about 8.5 kilometers northwest of Beijing, and at the top, you can float over the gorge in a cable car, cruise a man-made lake, or even bungee jump off a cliff. However, the chances of a disaster are highly probable. At that altitude, anything could happen. 2. Tianzi Hotel. Imagine crashing in the body of a god for the night. That's sort of what happens at the Tianzi Hotel in Langfang, Hebei, just an hour outside Beijing. Instead of a typical building, you're booking a room inside one of 3 giant colorful figures, Fu, Lu, and Shou, the legendary Chinese gods of fortune, prosperity, and longevity. In fact, Guinness named it the world's largest image building. This 10-story beauty stands about 137 feet tall, and each deity serves as part of the structure. Fu, the middle one in red, represents fortune and is linked to Jupiter. Lu, the green one, denotes prosperity and official rank. Shou, the white-bearded figure, stands for longevity and carries a peach, symbolically a sweet. Would you want to stay in a place like this, or does it creep you out a little? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Number 1. Coiling Dragon Cliff Skywalk. Imagine stepping onto a glass pathway that literally clings to the side of a mountain. That's what Coiling Dragon Cliff Skywalk is like. It's somewhere on Tianmen Mountain in Hunan Province's Zhangjiajie National Forest Park, and this skywalk first opened in August 2016. To get there, you hop aboard the world's longest mountain cable car for about a 30-minute ride just to reach the top where the skywalk awaits. But as breathtaking as this place is, it's currently under review by the government for safety issues. In 2022, there was an incident where a little girl almost had an accident that could have had a more terrible outcome. It looks like a lot of fun, but it could turn into a nightmare any minute. And if you enjoyed this little trip through China's strangest creations, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.